With Matt Rife's controversial entrance onto the mainstream comedy scene all done and dusted with, it got me thinking, where is he now? What has he been getting up to after all of the Netflix special controversy? What's his comedy like? What happened to Matt Rife? Part 1, catching up. So from the digging I've done, Matt just seems to be doing his thing. He's doing his stand-up and he seems to be working on his craft. His last podcast appearance was around 3 months ago when he featured on Jordan B Peterson's podcast, where he discussed his controversial joke on his special.
So now you're a comedian and you got canceled for a domestic assault joke. And then in response to that, instead of apologizing like a good boy, you put up a joke ad site about special needs helmets to protect the people who are offended by you.
As well as some potential changes to his comedy. But more on that in just a little bit. Part 2, his style of stand-up. It's fair to say one of the main reasons for Matt Rife kicking up so much controversy was to get his name in the mouth of mainstream comedy fans. And most importantly, to shift the demographic of his audience, with the aim of gaining more male fans that can appreciate a little bit more depth in his stand-up, as well as filtering out a predominantly female audience who just seem to like him for his looks and don't really care for his comedy, and for those who love his walking red flag crowd work.
So who makes up the bulk of your audience in your live shows? Is it men or women?
It is women, but I would say it's massively changed over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 months. When my TikTok status really started to rise at the top of last year, it was wildly predominantly female. I would say my shows from October of last year till about March of this year were like 90% women.
Any idea why?
It's anybody's guess. You could say it's my face. You could say it's my humor. I couldn't.
What do you think?
I'm not saying that all women just like Matt Rife and buy tickets to a show because of his looks. There's definitely a female demographic that appreciates Matt for his comedy and his comedy only. But now the dust has settled, has Matt trying to diversify his audience actually worked? So through sitting through hours of Matt Rife's comedy, as well as his crowd work, his style of comedy now prior to the Netflix controversy is more or less the same. He still does crowd work, and although people give him a hard time for it, I don't think it's that bad. But here's where it gets strange. I came to the conclusion that Matt Rife's comedy isn't necessarily just for women. Now, the crowd work, I would say that more caters to females just because of the walking red flag crowd work that he does. But it's still pretty close between males and females with regards to his crowd work.
And is it almost always women that you interact with in the crowd?
No, not at all. It's total luck of the draw, whatever happens. I mean, women yell out the most for sure. Like they'll heckle the most, so that will draw more adamant crowd work, like that I didn't necessarily intend on doing. But overall, no, it's just luck of the draw.
I think the notion of Matt's audience predominantly being female stems from 2 main problems. Number 1, the TikTok clips. And number 2, his promotion/marketing. When I first started seeing Matt Rife pop up on my feed, it was all crowd work and it was all females. But through watching his specials and a lot, and I mean a lot of his comedy, that crowd work stuff is only a glimpse of what Matt offers you when he's doing his stand-up. But you could argue that the majority of Matt's fans, mostly consisting of females, and creating this vicious cycle of non-stop crowd work is ultimately his doing, due to the promotion of himself and the wealth of TikTok clips featuring women and his crowd work that led him to go viral in the first place. The crowd work was a very good way of establishing himself and putting eyes on him. But the problem is now, the crowd work is all people expect from Matt Rife.
Yeah. That was a very specific trend a lot of women hopped onto. Like a woman would heckle, would yell something out, and that's obviously annoying, so you retort with a mean response comedically.
Yeah.
And this caught on. People were really into that. Like people were coming to shows, women were coming to shows requesting to be roasted. Now, obviously, I don't mean anything I say. I mean shut up and stop yelling out at shows.
Right.
But I'm articulating it in a way that, I'm just making some jokes at your expense.
Yeah. Understandably, this is getting on his nerves just a little bit. And you could say, and rightfully so, that he's caused this on himself.
Well, I've kind of created my own crowd work monster in a way. A friend of mine put this in perspective for me. I was getting popular for doing red flag crowd work just on TikTok, and it got so bad to the point where I'd be in the middle of working on material, and people would be yelling out like, "Do red flags," or just yelling out like their own red flags without any context at all. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna do one special at the Miami Improv, and then that's like the final statement closing the chapter on my red flag crowd work.
But if you remember from earlier, I mentioned that Matt Rife was talking about making some changes to his comedy. And one of those changes includes edgier material making its way into Matt Rife's comedy, which he briefly mentioned on the podcast with Jordan.
I love my new hour that I'm working on right now. So much edgier. It blows my mind people chose this one thing to attach themselves onto.
As to what that would look like, we're gonna have to wait and see. But it will be interesting to see which direction Matt takes his stand-up in. Point 3, current perceptions. With Matt looking to implement edgier material into his stand-up routine, it's worth mentioning his current public perception. Now, although the media kicked up quite the storm when his special hit Netflix, at a first glance, Matt's attempts at cancellation may have felt very forced, and may even potentially backfire, doing him more harm than good in the long run. But looking at the numbers on YouTube, as well as sifting through the YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, and X comments, seems to be pretty positive overall. But after all of the commotion, this whole fiasco seems to have left Matt the winner of this situation. Now, it's fair to say that the domestic violence joke in his Netflix special, as well as his false apology on Instagram, probably filtered out most of his wishy-washy fans. And as a result, this is now left him with a group of people that actually like him for his comedy, which seems to be his top priority at the moment.
And I purposely did it first in the show to go, hey, just so you know, this is the kind of humor I like to tell. And if it's not for you, you are so more than welcome to turn off the TV right now.
So where is Matt Rife and what exactly happened to him? Well, location-wise, I got no idea. But from my observations and research, he seems to be doing just fine. He's touring, he's working on his stand-up, he's building his fan base, he's doing his thing. And it doesn't look like people are going cold on him anytime soon. But do you like Matt? Are you a fan of his comedy? Be sure to let me know down in the comments.